In October of 2015, he was 23 years old, undefeated in 16 professional fights, and considered one of the brightest young prospects in the entire sport of boxing. 11 years later, on the 13th of August 2026, Prichard Colón finally lost the only fight he could never win. His story isn't just about boxing, it's about what happens after the cameras stop rolling, when a family is left to care for someone the world moved on from. Today we're telling the full, tragic story of Prichard Colón, the fighter whose final bout changed the rules of his sport forever, but couldn't save his own life. The news was confirmed on Thursday, the 13th of August 2026, through Prichard's father and longtime trainer, Prichard Colón, who shared the devastating update in a raw, personal post on his son's official Facebook page. Prichard wrote, in Spanish, "Good morning, my people. I regret to inform you of the passing of my son Prichard from this earthly world. He is now in a better place." He went on to share a heartbreaking detail, that he had tried everything he could to fulfill his son's dream of one final vacation to Puerto Rico, the island where Prichard first became a boxer, but it never became possible. He closed by thanking everyone for years of love and prayers. The confirmation was echoed shortly after by Paco Valcárcel, an executive with the World Boxing Organization, who informed press outlets in Puerto Rico that Colón had died. The WBO itself released a formal statement, calling Prichard's life one defined by courage, perseverance, and an extraordinary fighting spirit, adding that his story had transcended the sport of boxing entirely and touched the wider combat sports community with respect, admiration, and hope throughout the 11 years of his recovery. As of this recording, no additional details about the immediate circumstances of his death have been released, and his family has continued to ask for prayers and privacy during this time. Prichard Colón was born on the 19th of September 1992 in Maitland, Florida, to Puerto Rican parents. At just 14 years old, he made the decision to leave Florida and move to his family's native Puerto Rico to fully pursue boxing, training under his father, who had been a boxer himself. It didn't take long for his talent to become obvious. As an amateur, Colón won 5 separate national titles and earned a gold medal at the 2010 Pan American Youth Championship. He came agonizingly close to the Olympic stage as well, competing at the 2012 pre-Olympic tournament in Brazil for a spot at the London Games, though he was eliminated in the first round. Later in 2012, Colón made the decision to turn professional. What followed was one of the most electric starts to a career that Puerto Rican boxing had seen in years. After his professional debut in February of 2013, Colón went on an extraordinary run, winning 16 straight fights in a little over 2 years, 13 of them by knockout. He fought constantly, 5 times in 2013 alone, and 7 more times in 2014, building a reputation as a relentless, disciplined fighter with real-world title potential. In September of 2015, in one of the most notable wins of his career, he knocked out the far more experienced Vivian Harris in the 4th round, in front of a crowd in Toronto. At just 23 years old, undefeated, and full of promise, everything seemed to be building toward a shot at boxing's biggest stage. Then came the 17th of October 2015. Prichard Colón stepped into the ring at Eagle Bank Arena in Fairfax, Virginia, to face Terrell Williams in what was supposed to be just another step forward in his career. Instead, it became one of the most infamous fights in modern boxing history. During the bout, Williams repeatedly struck Colón with illegal rabbit punches, blows to the back of the head, a movement explicitly banned in the sport due to the danger it poses to fighters. Colón complained to the referee multiple times that he felt dizzy and that the back of his head was in pain. The fight continued anyway. In the 9th round, he was knocked down twice. Believing the bout had reached its end, Colón's own corner team began removing his gloves, prematurely, in the confusion, before the referee disqualified him entirely. Colón walked out of the ring under his own power. Minutes later, in his dressing room, he became dizzy and nauseous, and soon collapsed. He was rushed into emergency surgery for a severe subdural hematoma, a dangerous bleed on the brain, and fell into a coma that would ultimately last 221 days. Prichard Colón never fully woke up in the way his family had hoped. He emerged from the coma in a persistent vegetative state, and despite years of intensive rehabilitation and physical therapy, he never regained the ability to speak. His communication, in the years that followed, relied on computer-assisted technology, and physical responses to commands. His mother, Nieves, became the family's most consistent public voice, sharing small, meaningful updates over the years documenting glimpses of progress, including a widely shared 2018 video showing Prichard responding to verbal cues from his caretakers. His family never stopped caring for him around the clock for more than a decade, hoping for a recovery that, tragically, never fully came. In 2017, Prichard's parents filed a lawsuit seeking more than $50 million in damages, naming the ringside physician and the fight's promoters. The suit alleged that the doctor on duty failed to act despite Colón directly telling him he was dizzy and in pain, and that the promoters failed to provide adequate safety protocols for the bout. The case became one of the most closely watched legal battles in modern combat sports, and it directly led to lasting change. In the years following, several boxing commissions implemented what fighters and officials now refer to informally as the Prichard Colón rule, reinforcing stricter enforcement around rabbit punches and requiring referees to act immediately when a fighter reports disorientation or pain during a bout. In many very real ways, Prichard Colón's suffering reshaped fighter safety protocols for the entire sport, protecting boxers who came after him, even as his own condition never improved. Throughout his 11-year fight for survival, Prichard Colón's family remained his entire world, and by every account, he remained theirs. His father, Richard, who had trained him since childhood, became his full-time caretaker and the family's public voice, regularly updating supporters and thanking them for their continued prayers. His mother, Nieves, documented his slow, incremental progress with visible hope over the years. Even in his condition, Colón maintained a connection to the people who followed his story, posting in 2023 through assisted communication, asking where his supporters were, and noting that they had never given up on him. That sentence, more than perhaps any other, captures the relationship between Colón and the public who had followed his story since 2015. Specific details about a wife or children have not been part of Colón's public story, as his life following the injury centered almost entirely around his family's caretaking and his ongoing medical recovery. Given the nature of Prichard Colón's story, there is no meaningful net worth figure to report. His professional boxing career lasted just over 2 years, cut short at 23 years old, long before he could reach the kind of career earnings his early record suggested were possible. In the years since, his family's resources were devoted almost entirely to his continuous, round-the-clock medical care, a reality that ultimately became part of their public $50 million lawsuit against those they held responsible for his injury. Prichard Colón's story is one of the most difficult and most important cautionary tales in modern combat sports. It's a story about a single moment, a handful of illegal punches that should have stopped a fight, permanently altering the entire trajectory of a young athlete's life. It's also, painfully, a story about what real accountability looks like after tragedy. Rule changes named after him, referees trained differently because of what happened to him, and a sport forced to reckon with how quickly triumph can turn into tragedy inside the ring. For 11 years, Prichard Colón couldn't speak for himself, but his story spoke for every fighter who came after him, forcing an entire sport to take head injuries more seriously. Prichard Colón never got the world title shot his undefeated record once promised. Instead, he became something else entirely. The reason boxing changed the way it protects its fighters. He leaves behind his father Richard, his mother Nieves, and a legacy written not in championship belts, but in the safety rules now bearing his name. Rest in peace, Prichard. Your fight outside the ring changed the sport more than any fight inside it ever could have. If Prichard Colón's story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below sharing what his story means to you, or how you think combat sports should continue protecting fighters going forward. And if you want more respectful, in-depth stories about the athletes who shape their sports, don't forget to subscribe to Your Star Facts.